and I'm with Heather Turngren. I'm Heather Turngren. I also work with Minneapolis Adult Education, Minneapolis Public Schools. And we're here today to share with you our experiences with developing a future pathway, one of the TIF categories. We thank you for coming and spending your Monday afternoon with us. We are going to take a look at who's here in our webinar. We will also want to make sure that everything is working, and I believe that Patsy is going to be walking us through that.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing I want to mention is that I am recording, so just a heads up, so that you know that this will be archived and available online after we're finished today. Although I'm really glad that you all came to the live version. I think live webinars are much more interesting than listening to archived ones because you get to participate and interact both with each other and with the facilitators. So first we want to just double check that everyone can hear me and that you know where some of the functions are. I mentioned a couple minutes ago if you're having any sound troubles to please chat to me in the chat box, but let me just make sure people know where stuff is. So the microphone, if you need to mute yourself, looks like most people have found it, but it's the large green kind of old-time radio button that's, you can see it on the slide here, and you can find that, it's really on the top right-hand side of your screen. Yes, thank you. She's outlining it there. And if you want to say something, of course, feel free to do that. You just need to unmute yourself and then start talking. And it's always sort of embarrassing when you've been talking and then you realize you've been muted. So, you know, let's just all try to remember to unmute before you start talking. And then a couple other things to point out to you are under that same place where you see the orange arrow, which hides or shows your dashboard, and the green microphone, further down you'll see a hand, a little hand, and that's a way to indicate to us that you have a question to raise your hand. If everyone just wants to try that, go ahead and raise your hand so that we know you found that. Looks like most people have found it. I feel like everyone's waving at me. It's very sweet. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and put your hands down. Thank you. And then the other way to get our attention, if you need to, is of course to chat. So what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and just chat hello or hi into the chat box, and that way I'll know everyone has found that. Yay. All right, feeling the love. Thank you very much. That's great. So those are kind of the main things. The other things that I'll point out are under materials, which if you see the word materials in your dashboard and then you see a minus sign, you're good. It's already open. But if you see a plus sign, click on the plus sign and a couple things will open, and you'll get a link to a video you'll be watching later. Don't click on it right now. And then some handouts that were also in the materials for this webinar. I think we're good to go. Anything else, ladies, before we get started?
No, I think we're great. We are ready. We're ready to do this.
All right. I see a couple hands up. I'm going to assume they're just up from before, but if they're not, put them back up, okay? All right. All right. You go ahead. I'll go ahead and mute myself. Thank you, Stephanie and Heather.
Okay. All right. We're going to go over the agenda for today. So on the screen here, you'll see our agenda. Today we will recognize the purpose of the Transitions Integration Framework, the TIF, explore the Developing a Future Pathway category, and you'll see as we go along that's going to be abbreviated DFP for Developing a Future Pathway. Okay, so we'll look at the skills and the sub-skills there. And you will be chatting out at different times some answers or some comments about those skills and sub-skills. We will explore the sample activities found in the complete TIF. We'll be doing an exercise with that. We will use the ACES process to integrate Developing Future Pathways skills into a lesson. To do that, you will need to open a new tab on your computer, and you'll be accessing the video link, which you should see under your materials. Okay? Our video is 20 minutes long, so it'll be a little bit longer than what you see on the agenda. And then finally, we'll be exploring different TIFFing methods, which are ways to integrate these skills into your classroom and not just into an individual lesson. Okay? If anyone has a question about the agenda, feel free to raise your hand or chat something out in the chat box.
Okay, this is Heather, and just to give you a little bit more background on ACES. ACES is the Academic, Career, and Employability Skills, and as you can read on the slide here, its mission is to ensure that ABE programs are able to provide effective, contextualized instruction integrating post-secondary education and training readiness, employability skills, and career readiness at all levels. So this comes from a push not only from the national but from also our state level, and it's a way to embed these skills into every level of ABE. And by all of that we mean ESL and the GED preparation that we all do. You might be already doing this in your program with fast track programming or career pathway programming. Stephanie and I are going to show you ways that you can be embedding this idea of employability skills and career awareness into your classes.
Okay. We are going to begin our webinar today with a quick poll and also a quick pun here. So the questions are going to get at where are you at with developing a future pathway, the category itself, and we're going to evaluate your current integration of developing a future pathway skills into your instruction, okay? So we are going to launch a poll here, and we're going to ask everyone to go ahead and respond.
You have that, Stephanie, or would you like me to do that?
I'm on it.
Okay. There it is. Great.
We'll take about maybe 30 seconds to a minute for you guys to answer the poll, and then we'll show the results.
Okay, it looks like we've got 88% of our attendees having voted, and I think in just one couple seconds we're going to close this poll. Okay, so we're going to close the poll now, and we are going to share the results. Okay, so 29% of us said I very intentionally integrate developing future pathway skills. 43% said it's part of what I do, but not very intentional. 14% said I know I'm doing it, but not really sure. And 14% said I kind of wing it. I teach it if it comes up. And it's great to see that nobody said, huh? What is developing a future pathway? So it looks like most of us are right in that area where we know that it's part of what we do, but maybe it's not as intentional as it could be. And so hopefully that might change after this webinar today. Okay, we are going to do an activity here where you match some skills and some sub-skills.
So Stephanie, you'll need to hide the results and click back on your PowerPoint for us.
Okay. I am so sorry.
There it is. No, you're all good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patsy. Okay, so we're going to do an activity where you're going to match some skills and sub-skills. So if you wouldn't mind referring to page 2 in your handout. So I'm going to quickly share. This is what you should be looking at, where we have the skills at the top and the sub-skills underneath. So this is a quick reference. I hope everyone's able to access their handouts. Okay, so the Developing a Future Pathway category of the TIF contains 3 skills. Each skill is broken down into sub-skills. Okay, you can read these skills on your handouts on page 2. So what you're going to see on the next page is a skill, and then the sub-skills are going to be introduced, and you're going to chat out which of the skills you think it matches. So it would be skill 1, skill 2, or skill 3.
So I'm hearing a lot of background noise from Sarah. Sarah, could you go ahead and thank you?
Okay, thank you. We're going to begin. If you take a look at page 2, you know what? We're going to get started, okay? It'll be just 1 second. Here we go. So you guys have to tell me which skill it is. We have skill 1, evaluate personal skills, strengths, values, and beliefs to inform decisions about one's future pathway. We have DFP skill 2, which is explore available options in order to identify one's future pathway. And the third skill in the DFP skills, which is effectively complete the steps needed to enter into a selected pathway. So here's our first activity. And I want you guys in the chat box to type which one do you think this is. Is it skill 1, skill 2, or skill 3? I see Gail and Astrid say skill 1. Anyone else? Allie, skill 1. Great, we'll take a check. You guys are correct. That is skill 1.
Way to go!
Pat yourselves on the back. Here we go. Link personal skills and interests to various careers or community opportunities. Again, chat out which skill you think this is. Oh, it looks like you guys are all unanimous. Skill 2. Woo-hoo, 2 for 2. Let's take a look at the next one. We have research and outline the process needed to enter into a volunteer opportunity, educational program, or career. Again, chat out which skill. Oh, I think we might be 3 for 3, you guys. What do you think? Yes, indeedy.
I can't believe how fabulous you're doing.
Here we go. Reflect on successes and challenges to identify skills and aptitudes. Again, chat out.
Okay, lots of 1s we're seeing.
1 it is. We have implement appropriate strategies to complete each step. Networking, job shadowing, conducting informational interviews.
Lots of 3s in the chat box.
And 3 it is.
All right, the 3s have it.
Conduct research on community resources, education, and training options. 2, 2, 2, woohoo! Yes, and 2 it is. Identify personal interests. Which skill do you think this is?
Lots of 1s popping up.
And
excellent.
Here we go. Recognize and use vocabulary related to skills, values, and beliefs.
Lots of 1s again.
You guys are pretty familiar with this, Tiff.
Yeah.
Gather and organize requisite information and documents needed for a particular step in the process. Example, work history, awards and certificates, financial information.
All right, lots of 3s, and it's not cheating to have your TIF right next to you. That's just being organized.
Yes, that's self-management, another one of the categories. So that is number 3. We have explore the job market and current employment trends. 2s all around. Here we go. You guys are correct. Great work. I think this was a nice way for us to review what the skills are within the TIF and the Transitions Integration Framework.
Okay. What we're going to do next is dig a little deeper into what the complete TIF contains. Okay. So in the complete TIF, we have the 8 categories with definitions, skills and subskills, sample activities ranging from simple to complex, sample technology ideas to practice those skills, and ideas to contextualize for community, school, or work. So depending on what kind of a context your classes might match up with, you can kind of tailor how you use the TIF for those different contexts. The complete TIF has the activity guides, which makes it a bigger document than the TIF at a glance. All right.
If you take a look at page 4 and page 5 of your handouts, you can see exactly what we're showing on the screen.
Okay. So we're going to take you through here the different things that are displayed on a page from the complete TIF, from the Developing a Future Pathway category. So at the top here, highlighted in yellow, you'll see the definition of this category, Developing a Future Pathway. So I'll just read that. Developing a future pathway builds the aptitude to more fully understand one's own skills, interests, and talents, and how these are transferable to a successful career or success in one's family or larger community. Activities include using a variety of data and research methods to identify and choose a potential pathway, goal setting and learning about the culture of being a professional in the United States. Teaching the skills in this category will help learners to be more self-actualized and purposeful in the choices that they make about their future. Okay. Oops. Okay. So moving down from the definition, you will see skill 1. Students will be able to evaluate personal skills, strengths, values, and beliefs to inform decisions about one's future pathway. So that's the first skill. And then in just a minute, we'll see under that there are 4 subskills, A, B, C, and D. So later on, if you are working on an activity where you're supposed to identify a skill or a subskill, the way that we would identify these would be, we'd write a 1, skill 1, and then next to that an A, B, C, or D. So we would say skill 1A, skill 1B. Okay? So subskill A, recognize and use vocabulary related to skills, values, and beliefs. Subskill B, identify personal interests. Subskill C, reflect on successes and challenges to identify skills and aptitudes. And subskill D, recognize how one's values and beliefs impact choices regarding a future pathway. Okay? Moving below that, now we're going to highlight sort of the levels of complexity. So these example activities relate to skill 1, subskill B.
Also within the larger TIF, you will not see an activity example for every subskill. You might just see activity examples for about 2 subskills of every skill.
Right, and if you're familiar with the TIF, you know the document is already about 90 pages long, so adding activity grid for every single skill and subskill would have just made it too cumbersome. So we are focusing right on skill 1, subskill B, identify personal interests. I want you to look at that arrow that shows us the range of complexity. Over here on the left, this would be for a more beginning level class, these activities. Over here we would have activities for an intermediate level class. And then to the right, we have activities for a more advanced level class, okay? So our sample activities at the beginning level categorize pictures of different kinds of activities into things I like to do and things I don't like to do. If we take that to the intermediate level, it might be respond to Likert scale questions on an online survey, indicating for each activity how much one does or does not like the activity. Strongly dislike, somewhat dislike, like, somewhat like, and strongly like. At the advanced level, we might brainstorm activities, or we might have students brainstorm activities they like and dislike and create a profile of their interests that could be shared in a variety of ways.
I'd like to point out that this beginning, intermediate, and advanced can be at all levels of our ABE spectrum, including ELLs up to native English speakers.
And then underneath these sample activities, you'll see there are some specific suggestions for how to integrate technology into teaching these skills and sub-skills in your classroom. Those of you who are familiar with the TIF know that technology is not a standalone category. Rather, it was embedded into all of the categories to make sure that our students are getting these vital skills. Okay? So if you'll see when we're categorizing pictures, now we might use an online image search to find in print pictures of activities that one likes, and then writing sentences and creating a collage, right? So doing like a Google image search.
And I think, Stephanie, you pointed out how students might use Pinterest or
Yes.
something with this. So there's many ways to get technology embedded.
At the intermediate level, use an online image search to find pictures of activities one likes. And then to make it a little more complex, instead of just printing those, we would copy and paste them into a Word document and type our sentences. Okay? At the advanced level, our survey goes digital. Okay? Survey a partner about their personal interests, and then find 3 websites he or she might like based on their interests and share them with a partner. We might also use something like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey in order to create the survey. Okay? Below our technology examples at the bottom, we have our contexts. So when refining this category after we got feedback from the initial group of users for the TIF, we made some changes to make sure that this category and all categories were things that teachers, no matter what kinds of classes and what kinds of students they had, would feel comfortable integrating. So if you have a class where you're focusing on more like survival English, being out in the community, going to the doctor office, going to maybe speak with your child's teacher, for example, you're going to look at the line that says community. Okay? So here, oops, sorry about that. So now our pictures, instead of being, our pictures now might relate to hobbies that I like or household tasks. Okay? When it comes to school, you might find pictures of how you like to work at school. Do you like pair work, group work, or taking a test? Okay? If you do have a class that happens to be focusing on work, your pictures might be pictures of someone working outside, someone working inside, sitting at a desk, working with their hands, working with children. And so we're giving the students experience thinking about what they like to do, but within different contexts. Okay? Remember, if at any time you want to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box or just raise your hands. Okay, we are now going to refer to our handouts. We're going to be on page 6, okay? You are going to look at sample activities for one subskill of each of the Developing a Future Pathway skills. Choose which level of complexity, so beginning, intermediate, or advanced, best matches the level that you teach. Choose a sample activity and decide what modifications or tweaks you would have to make to that activity for your level and context. And then you are going to take notes on page 6. There's a grid on page 6, okay? So we're going to give you a few minutes to work on this, maybe 3 minutes to work on this, and then I'm going to be asking some people who would be willing to raise their hand and share out some answers. So again, really zoom in on your own classroom and students. Pick some activities that might work for your level, and then think about how you would have to tweak or change them to make them work in your classroom.
I'm going to go to the next page so you can take a look at some of these sample activities. So again, we're looking on our screen at Skill 1, Subskill B, and you can see how we have the complexity level. Now we have Skill 1, Subskill C.
Mm-hmm. So you're probably looking right now at your own copies of these activity grids in your materials, and then you're writing some ideas down on page 6. Okay, so we're going to keep going for another minute or so with having you jot your ideas down on that handout on page 6 in the grid. And then I'm going to ask that a couple people share some of their ideas, okay? So maybe we could get one person to share an idea for skill 1, one person for skill 2, and one person for skill 3. We'll check back with you in just a minute.
We've changed the screen to reflect another skill.
Skill 3.
Yeah, that was an error. We're still looking here at Skill 1, Subskill C.
All right, and I am hoping that we'll get one brave person to share with us an activity that they might be able to tweak for their classroom related to skill 1. Okay? Could I get someone to raise their hand or write into the chat box that they'd be willing to share something about skill 1? So skill 1 again is evaluate personal skills, strengths, values, and beliefs to inform decisions about one's future pathway. All right, Gail, excellent. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, you can share what you chose.
Sure. I teach in a pre-nursing assistant class, and I'd say they're high, intermediate, low advanced learners, and I think that I give them an evaluation at the end of the 11 weeks, and I identify things that I think they're doing well and things that they could be doing better. But I like the idea of having them do a ranking of skills in the 4 areas or plus computer 5 areas of learning and asking them to give me some evidence about why they're saying this is their best skill and where's the one where they need to improve most. And I think it would be interesting to see how that matches with my assessment.
Okay, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. So you're having students evaluate their own skill level after having completed your course. And I can say from having done a lot of career integration in my own classroom, I think that getting students to be able to verbalize their own strengths and skills is so, so important. So many of the students I've had will tell me I don't have any skills, and to be able to empower them to go to a job interview and talk about their skills, I think is such a wonderful service that we can do for our students. Thank you, Gail. Would someone be willing to share something about skill 2? Could I get a volunteer to talk about skill 2? Explore available options in order to identify one's future pathway.
Looks like Melody has her hand up.
Now, I don't see any hands up.
I see Melody.
Oh, I see Melody, yes.
Yes, I'm Melody, and I am teaching in an ABE classroom where there are students who are still pre-GED all the way through getting ready for college, so it's quite a wide span. And it's so good to see you again, Stephanie. Thanks for being our PLC lead. So I'm excited to come back into this work.
Melody.
And so I looked at skill 2, subskill A. And so that's link personal skills and interests to various careers or community opportunities. And the example provided was that students would look up the website such as mymncareers.org or iSeek to search a couple different jobs of interest and then see how their current skills match up with what is needed and decide which jobs are a good fit or not. And I think that is a really valuable activity for a lot of my students who have big plans, but they don't quite see all the steps to get there. So it's a great way to just see this is how I made, this is what I'm interested in, and how it matches or doesn't match with what they thought a career might be like. So we're currently walking through this process. So this looks just like a lot of my lesson plans, so it's really exciting to get some great resources. A tweak that I would make to this example activity would to be extend the decide which jobs are a good fit or not into some more of a language lesson as well. Maybe give them some sentence frames and say, I discovered that the job, this position of would be a good fit because, or just to give them some more language around evaluating those choices. So that was what I thought might work with my students.
Wow, Melody, thank you so much. You really shared something really complete. What a well thought out idea in the amount of time you were given. And I am happy to see you again too. Melody was part of my PLC group last spring, and it's wonderful to see that you're still continuing with the ACES work. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your work too.
You know what, I really liked what you said, Melody. This is Heather, but also that you saw some of your lesson plans in here. We just like to point out that the TIF does not mean that we're not already embedding some of these skills into our classrooms, but it's just to show perhaps other ways that, like what you said, you can just tweak it and change it to make it yours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I see Kristen, are you willing to share something from skill 3, effectively complete the steps needed to enter into a selected pathway?
I actually was just going to comment, piggyback on what Melody said. On iSeek, I use that site a lot, and there are actually assessments on iSeek that you can kind of reverse this activity and do it the other way. So you can take the assessment, say the activities you like, the skills you have, and they'll give you some careers that will fit. So I like to do it that way too, kind of like just flip this activity and start out with the skills that you already have, the activities you enjoy, the subjects you like, and then they'll give you some jobs, and then you can explore the jobs on the Minnesota site or other resources.
Right, so starting almost with something like an interest inventory to kind of guide where you would look next?
Yeah, and iSeek has a lot of those, and they're really great.
Good, good. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Okay, and I see Erin raised her hand. Erin, did you have something to share about skill 3, or did you want to share more about skill 2?
Yeah, I was going to share something for skill 3.
Okay.
The one I'm looking at is skill 3, subskill A, research and outline the process needed to enter into a volunteer opportunity, educational program, or career. And I was looking at this, and actually, so I have this sort of one-room schoolhouse situation where it's a newer program, and so I am the morning program. So people come in, and I have people from pre-lit, mostly like beginning level through advanced. And I thought it would be actually kind of neat to work on this as a whole class activity with people contributing as they're able. So it suggests, like at the lower level of complexity, to, as a class, discuss the steps one took to take into adult classes, write the steps in order using simple imperative sentences, and then compare these to the process needed to enter into another community, educational, or employment opportunity. So I was looking at that and thinking, okay, my beginner students could do that at a pretty, level of lower literacy. And then the next step of complexity for an intermediate group, it says it has the same thing: discuss the steps you took to get into adult classes, write it using imperative sentences, share with the class, reach a consensus on the steps, and then choose another opportunity in the community or in education, employment, and hypothesize the steps to enter into that opportunity. Then moving up to advanced, they have the same activity, but the students are doing it as more of a writing activity. I was thinking it would be kind of neat because we're always recruiting. I work for Lindale Neighborhood Association, so the ESL class, the ABE class, is one of the programs they have. I was thinking it would be kind of cool. We have students who are coming in. You know how ABE works with largely through word of mouth, and definitely so in my program. So it would be kind of neat to sort of have the students work together at different levels to build some kind of brochure about how the different ways that people come into our class, the different stories that happen as people go through, and how people can move up from one group to another and improve their English, and make that into a sort of brochure booklet as a recruitment tool for our program. And then as part of that, they could show the steps that students took as they approached the program, became students, started to help other students and integrate themselves into the program and make strides in their English. And then we could include maybe a couple of other programs that we have available to those same populations through the neighborhood organization, and the students could, include that in the brochure as well, and then we could hand that out at our community events where we recruit.
Wow, Erin, that's such a fabulous idea. What a great way to take one of these activities and give it such a meaningful, real-world connection where your students would really be creating something that would benefit their program and give them wonderful experience doing, layout and design, and you could integrate some technology, and I would love to see your finished product if you get that.
So would I.
It's also so empowering to have the students be informing future students the steps needed, and I really like that lens to put on it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your ideas and your tweaks for ways to use these activities. We're going to move on now because of time. I will mention that we were chatting a little bit in the chat box. There is an online resource that is free called the Aspirations Toolkit. It was compiled maybe 2 years ago by the National College Transitions Network. They put out a call for different educators from around the country to send in lesson ideas related to transitions. And you can download the lessons. There are some videos available. And so altogether, there are many, many different wonderful free lesson ideas. They're all completely open source materials to be used by anyone. So check that out online if you have a chance.
And I'm going to support my colleague here. Stephanie actually submitted and has one of her lessons in there on working on informational interviews that we'll see in our video here.
Yes. So basically the lesson you're going to see in the video in a few minutes is also part of the toolkit. So, yeah. All right, we're going to move on now. We're going to talk a little bit about the steps in the ACES process.
So the ACES is a process, and I am wondering if you guys can type into the chat box what you think ACES in the process means. We know that ACES is for academic in the whole project, but just in the process, what do you think the A stands for? Aaron, you are on it. Okay, yes, yes, yes. So A is for assess, okay? And this is how we assess our instruction, we assess our materials, we assess our curriculum, and we identify where the TIF skills are addressed. So that is the A portion of the ACES process. Next we have the C. Can you guys tell me what the C is? Complement. Yes, Melody. Okay. Yes, Kristen, Rosie, Vicki, yes. C is for complementing, how we intentionally integrate TIF skills into our materials, into our instruction, into our curriculum and lesson planning. Next we have the E. Can you guys chat out and tell me what the E stands for? Evaluate. Yes, Gail, you are on it. The E is evaluate. So this, I think, is really important that we look at the outcomes, and that's showing student learning after delivering a lesson, after we use our materials, after we try the activity in the TIFT manner. And next we have the S. Can you guys tell me what the S is in the final ACES process? Study. Yes, Vicki. Study and reflect, Rosie, you are so correct. This is study and reflect, and in my mind, sometimes I think this is not what we do enough of because it takes time to study and reflect upon what else do students need, what else do I need. So I think given this whole ACES process, it's something that we can be integrating into all of our lesson planning. When we talk about the ACES process, this webinar and the workshop materials that Stephanie and I have created are looking at the assessment and the complementing. So we're just going to be focusing on the A and the C part of the ACES process today. Evaluating and studying and reflecting are things that you will have to do in your classroom after you've been embedding these materials and lessons. So we're going to be looking at the pre-ACES plan that Stephanie has used. It is in your handouts. If you guys take a look, it should be on page, I think it's on page 14 of your 13 of the handout. You guys have the grid, so you're going to look at the TIF at a glance, the snapshot on page 3. You're also going to go to page 13, which has the assessment grid, okay, for DFP, and we're going to look at the lessons that Stephanie put together in the handout, and you guys are going to look at the components so that we can use the process in the pre-lesson. Okay, here we go.
And I'm noticing,
Gail and Aaron, your hands are up, and I think that was from the past. Gail, do you have a question?
Nope, I don't.
Okay, thanks.
I'm just going to lower your hand then, okay?
When you turn to page 13, I want to apologize. I see in the warm-up column there's an NA. We should have gone in and taken that out. My lesson does have a warm-up, so you can cross out on your handout NA and actually look at what you see on the screen right now for the warm-up, the Looking for Jobs brainstorm. and see if there are any skills and subskills from this DFP category that you could put on the chart. And again, I apologize for not changing that.
So again, the warm-up activity is looking for jobs, and the students are brainstorming. The teacher leads students in a brainstorming activity to think of ways to look for and learn about jobs. And then the teacher introduces the concept of an informational interview as a way to learn more about a job.
Okay. So if you see any skills or sub-skills that might work, might be practiced from doing this warm-up, you would mark them down on your grid.
And you can always refer to page 3 of your handout with the snapshot of developing a future pathway. We'll give you about 1 minute to take a look at the materials for the pre-ACES lesson plan and fill out your grid.
Here, I'm going to go here to the next page. Okay. Would anyone, or if you're ready, you could chat out in the chat box any skills and sub-skills that you think might be present in this pre-TIF lesson here. So anything in the warm-up, introduction, guided practice, or independent practice. Okay, and Erin says she sees 2B.
Yep, 3A. Okay, so Gail, you have 2C and 3A.
Okay, I think you're onto something here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and reveal some answers. So in the warm-up, we do have skill 3, subskill C. All right. In the introduction, skill 2, subskill B. Okay, so that would be explore the job market and current employment trends. Skill 3C would be implement appropriate strategies to complete each step. So we might be learning about what those strategies would be. Okay, so now we're going to look at the guided practice. Some of you might have already peeked ahead since the whole lesson plan is included in your handouts. So for this, the guided practice, the students write questions. Students choose one of the occupations that has been listed. It can be an occupation they are interested in learning more about. And the teacher helps students write 7 to 10 questions that they have about the occupation they have chosen. And the questions will serve to guide the students in their research. So if you have any ideas what skills or sub-skills might be related to this guided practice, feel free to chat those out. 3A. All right. Thank you, Kristen. Okay. And keep in mind, you know, some of these answers are sort of suggested answers. So Kristen had 3A, which was research and outline the process, and that would certainly be related. 2A, the skill 2, explore available options in order to identify one's future pathway. Those skills would also be practiced here. Okay. And then the independent practice for this lesson involves having your students do a little research. So when I've done this lesson, I've used this website called citytowninfo.com, and they have a section called Career Stories. And I've had my students read one of the career stories and take some notes. However, I know there are also other resources that people might be able to find or videos that might be available online. So we can again look back at our grid.
And if you guys could chat out what skills or sub-skills you found from that activity in the pre. So Sarah, you said 2B.
Okay, we've got 2B, explore the job market and current job trends, employment trends, absolutely. And conduct research on community resources, education, and training options, absolutely. Yes, very good. Very good. I think you guys are right on the money here. So for this pre-lesson, there is not an extension. And the assessment would involve having students maybe do a little bit of writing and having the teacher review that writing for errors, okay? All right. What we are going to do now is watch a video in which you will see me teaching a lesson on conducting informational interviews. You will need to open a new tab on your computer to access the video. Our video is actually 20 minutes long, so a little bit longer than what it says on your screen here. So we are going to be returning once I'm finished with your directions. It looks like it will be just about 3:45 when we return, so 3:45, okay? While you watch the video, be sure to mark down in the complement column on your grid the various skills and sub-skills that you see in the video.
And remember, this is the post-ACES lesson. So Stephanie tipped this lesson and incorporated many other complementary activities for developing a future pathway.
And one final thing that I'll add is I actually had to borrow a class for teaching this lesson. So I am not teaching I'm teaching some former students, but not my current students. And at the very end of the lesson, I had to go off and teach my own class. And so the last couple minutes of the video show one of my Minneapolis colleagues named Jamie finishing off my lesson with his students. So at about 18 minutes, you'll see that I go away and I'm replaced by Jamie, and that's because I had to go back to class. Yes. So please do open up the video in a new window, and we'll see you back at 3:45. Thank you, Patsy. Everybody. Today we're going to be talking about jobs, okay? And we're going to talk about how do we learn about jobs. So if you are interested in finding a new job or learning about jobs, what can you do to find more information, for example?
First of all, you find for the internet.
Okay, so you could look on the internet.
Morning.
Okay, good morning. You can look on the internet. Okay, What else can we do?
Yeah, another thing is you ask the people, the friends.
Yes. So Kaltun said newspaper, and Mohammed said you can ask. Good. So that was going to be my next question. If you want to ask someone about their job, what kinds of questions can you ask? So Kaltun said maybe I would ask, are they hiring? Like your company, are they hiring, right? What other kinds of questions would I maybe ask if I wanted to learn?
Yeah, is there any position you have a company?
Are there any positions open at your company? So, when we want to start learning about jobs, we can search the internet, look in the newspaper, talk to friends, and maybe ask people in our own community, right? Morning, Uba. Okay, so another way that we can learn about jobs is to talk to someone who has that job, okay? So what's a job you have now or you might want to have in the future? Just any example.
Like childcare.
Okay, super. So maybe being a child care worker, right? So maybe right now, I'm not a child care worker.
Yeah.
But maybe I want to become a child care worker, so I could talk to someone, for example, who works in child care, right? At a child care center. And I would talk to that person about her job, and I would ask questions, okay? And when we do this, when we talk to people about their jobs, okay, it's called an informational, right? Information or informational interview. Yeah, have you ever heard of an interview?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we start a job, we go to an interview, right? And what happens at an interview? They ask you questions, right?
Yes.
And the manager asks you questions. Why?
Because they know their history.
They want to know your history, right? They want to learn about you, right?
Are you qualified?
Are you qualified? Do you have experience?
Yes.
Do you have any skills, right?
Do you have a certificate?
Do you have a certificate?
You have a resume.
A degree, a resume, yes. So they ask you all kinds of questions, right? Okay, so an informational interview is kind of flipped. It's kind of the other way. In an informational interview, I ask another person questions about their job. So if I wanted to be a child care worker, for example, I would find someone who worked in that job, and I would say, can I ask you some questions about your work? And I do this so I can learn more about the job, because maybe I think I like it, but really, maybe there are things I would not like, right? So one way to learn. Restaurant manager. So I picked these jobs because some of these jobs you can learn about right at our program. For example, you can learn about child care worker at our program. Also, I think sometimes truck driver, and also working in a restaurant, earning a certificate to be a manager, okay? Some of these are not in our program, but they are things I know sometimes students are interested in, working in healthcare, right? Dental assistant and pharmacy technician. Pharmacy, do you know what a pharmacy technician is? So, I want you to decide which of these jobs you want to learn more about, okay? And then I want you to find a partner. Together, 2 or 3 people who are going to learn about one of these jobs. Okay?
About the pharmacist, what pharmacist can do and information that you want to learn by doing some research today.
Yeah, I know that. Because when you go to criminal case and make appointment, they do that. They take the X-ray.
Now, we're going to think of a way that we can organize our ideas, okay? Okay. So, I'm going to give you this chart, okay? And this chart is called KWL chart, okay? So the K means, what do I already know about this career, okay? Maybe it's only a little bit, and that's okay, all right? You're going to write down what you know. Maybe you know where this person works, what kind of a place, or you know something about their job duties, or something about the education they need, okay? You are going to write down, together with your partners, 1 or 2 ideas about something you know about what you have on the paper. And then you're going to think about, what do I want to learn more? What questions do I have? So the W is, what do I want to learn? What else do I want to know about this job? Okay? So you're going to put something here and something here. Okay? We're not going to put anything here right now. Okay? So what do you know about someone who might work in a pharmacy? What do you already know?
Number 1 was assistant of pharmacist.
Okay, so that's right. That's on your paper, so you could put that down. A pharmacy technician? Yeah, assists a pharmacist. Right. You put what you know, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe you only know a couple of things, but you know that they help with fillings, so that, yeah, you can put that. It's just ideas. What's something you know about what a truck driver might do?
Delivery.
So they can deliver, for example, what do they deliver? Okay, so yeah, so for example, I work at a company, I need paper. Then the delivery driver delivers the paper I need, or office supplies, right? Yeah. What about to people's houses? Do drivers ever bring things to people's houses? Yeah, like Federal Express or UPS, sometimes they bring like packages to people's houses, maybe? Yeah. The K is what you know, the W is what you want to learn, and the L is what you already learned, what you did learn later. We'll do that last. How can I? So I think salary means how much do I take home? And I think this question is there a way I can find money, maybe from a grant or from the government, to help financial aid, to help me pay?
Or your pocket?
Or my pocket?
Yes. This was free now.
Yes.
This was not free.
College. Yeah. You need money.
Oh, that's right. So how can I find money to pay for college or for training? Yeah. Find money to pay for school. Should we say for school? Okay. So one question I might have is, what kind of certificate do I need for this job, right? So their jobs were pharmacist, technician, and dental assistant, yeah? What's another one?
Where can I learn school pharmacist or dentist?
Yeah, where can I go to school, right? And then I really like the question you asked about how can you pay, right?
Yeah.
That was a good one. Can you read that one, Caltoon?
Which one?
I think it was number 5.
Yeah, how can I find the money to pay for the school?
Yeah, that was a good one. Where can I find money to pay for this school? Because they were talking at this table, school, when you go to college, is very expensive, right? Yeah. Our program here is free, but when you go to college, it's not free, right? And so, yeah, can you find financial aid or scholarship or grant to help you pay for the certificate? Yes, very good. We're going to put these over here. So you asked about an internship, right? Yeah. How long? Where's your internship question? Yeah. Can you read that one?
How long does our internship?
How long it takes?
Takes the
Internship. Yeah. So do you know what an internship is? Yeah. What is it? I don't know. You have to tell me. It's for training, right? It's on-the-job training. It's where I go and work for a company, and I do it maybe for little money or no money to get experience, right? And then if I do a good job, hopefully that company would hire me to be a worker, right? Yeah. These are questions we could ask someone for our interview, our informational interview. Okay? But also there are other ways we could find out answers to these questions, right? We could do a little bit of research, right? Yeah, what does research mean?
To find.
How to find something.
Yeah. Maybe find some answers at the library, some on the internet, and then maybe some I talk to people, and that's also research, talking and asking questions. Yes, I found for you some research. I found for you some information about your job, okay? So these are stories. They're called career stories, and it's a story written by someone who has a job, and they tell what they like or what they don't like about their job. They talk about what kind of school they need, what they like, what can be difficult about their job, okay? So I'm going to give you one of these that goes along with the information on your smaller sheet, okay? So over here I have pharmacy. You can talk about your story with a partner, and then you're going to put down 1 or 2 or 3 things that you learn on your L, okay? Oh, so that's something you didn't know, that it only takes 2 years? Yes. And so it's a quick way to get started. But you remember, yeah, you're not a dentist, you're a helper. But then once you, being a helper is good too. And then once you get experience, yes, then it could be more and more and more, right? Yes.
Best or worst?
Yeah, so it talks about the best and worst parts of the job, right?
Yeah.
What did this person think was the best part of the job?
Best part of the job, learn how much to take a pharmacy, you can gain a lot of knowledge.
So yes,
That's the best side.
you learn from other workers, right?
Yes.
From your coworkers, yes.
Other way for opposite side.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we have. Find to deal with occasional rude or guest.
Yeah, so you have to work with a rude guest, right?
Yeah,
Someone
sometimes.
who's maybe not happy. Yeah, so that might be a bad part, right?
Okay, so you didn't know that sometimes washing dishes would be part of that job? Yeah. Do you think washing dishes would be something you'd like or not like?
If he
You would not like?
if he manager, how can the wash it?
Yeah, but what if you're the manager and then one of your dishwasher calls and says, I'm sick, I can't come in?
Yeah.
So maybe you would have to help out. Usually a manager has to learn every single job in the restaurant. How to be the dishwasher, how to be the table cleaner, how to be the order taker, how to be the cook.
Cooking, wash people.
And also how to watch people, right? But if someone from your staff calls in sick, maybe it's your job you have to jump in and help, right? You have to fill the position. And even if that's a position you don't like washing dishes. Yeah. Mohammed, do you have something that you learned that you didn't know?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, I started for the job of tips.
So you were interested in the job tips.
How to find place of employment that will be technical classes.
So you have to you only need 10 classes or take tech classes?
Tech classes.
Take tech classes, okay.
Employment, they pay for the classes.
I know. So it's saying some places where you work, you should look for a workplace that will pay for your classes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's for the occasion when.
So there are things that you learned, and some of those are, hey, this is great. Other stuff is, maybe I wouldn't like to do this about this job, or I don't like this idea, right? Things that I would not, or things that I don't think I would like, right? This is kind of not for me. Okay, maybe you decided you were excited, pharmacy technician, woohoo, and then, oh, I don't want to do this. Okay, right? Things I would still have to learn, things I would have to learn to do this. And then lastly, things I already have experience with. So maybe you discovered that, hey, I'm almost halfway there, right? I know these two questions, or they're not really questions, but these two areas are really kind of similar to the modals that we've been talking about.
Last minds.
Okay? It's kind of advice. Here it's not really advice, but here we got the modal would. Okay? So we're talking about what we would like. Okay, we're kind of imagining if you had this job. Okay, we're using our imagination. If we had this job, I would like this. Okay, if I had this job, I wouldn't like this. Okay, we don't have the job today, but if, we're kind of imagining, right? We're kind of imagining. So just think about those two things and write some ideas. What would you like? What wouldn't you like? About restaurant managers. So these are the positive things, right? We got 2 restaurant managers?
No, I want 2.
2? Anybody else?
Meet new people.
Okay, meet new people. Okay, I would like, meet new people. Okay, that's good. Okay, how about pharmacy technician?
Yes.
Okay. I have very popular, I think very popular among you guys. Pharmacy technician. Okay, what would you like about it?
Yeah, I like to work the pharmacy and medicine.
Okay. You want to work with medicine?
Medicine.
Okay. Some more specific questions. So hopefully after today, right, you've got some questions already of things I have to learn. Some of these questions and some of the other questions that you made, you could ask, those questions to him. Because now you've got more specific things you want to know. All right, so that might be helpful.
Okay, everyone, we are going to be coming back now, so please wrap up watching the video, and then we would love to take the next couple of minutes and have people share any comments or anything you wrote in your compliment column on your ACES process grid. Thank you. I did like how compliment had sort of a dual meaning there, Patsy. Thank you so much. I was fishing a little bit, I'll admit it. So if anyone wants to share anything that you got from watching the lesson when you compare it to the pre-ACES lesson, please raise your hand or be ready to chat out. We want to make sure we're finished by 4, so we are in a little bit of a time constraint here. Okay, so Melody wrote, it was great to see those skills and sub-skills in action. Thank you. Were there any skills or sub-skills in particular that you noticed or something that you noticed that was integrated? Virgin wrote, this is a great example of how to take an already existing lesson and make it more deliberately include the TIF skills. Yes, thank you. So from my point of view, adding some of those graphic organizers, like opening up with a KWL chart, practices actually takes skills from several categories of the TIF, such as critical thinking, for example. Having the students do group work includes some effective communication.
I think also the way you had students present was another way to integrate effective communication.
Yes. And yes, both Rosie and I think Gail commented on the graphic organizers. Yes, so the graphic organizers are so wonderful to use with just about any kind of text I found. There was more of 1B and 3C in this lesson, yes. So we're going to go ahead and go through what we identified as some of the complements here, so you can watch your screen. So we had 3C again because the warm-up really didn't change. In the introduction, there was the addition of 1A. When the students were chatting, we were using some of that vocabulary related to skills that a person in a certain job might have. Great. Thank you, Astrid, for the extension. It's too bad we weren't able to show anything about the extension in the video, but it is an important part of the lesson. Okay, and then for the guided practice, they stayed pretty much the same. Okay. For the independent practice, we brought in more of those skills from Skill 1 because now the students are not only talking about vocabularies related to skills in general, but also making it more personal, talking about their own interests. By filling out that 4-square chart where they had to think about what they would like about a job and what they wouldn't like, that helps them to identify some personal interests.
And I was actually, this is Heather, I was actually in on the lesson, and I heard students talk about what they liked and didn't like, which may not have come out in the short video clip, but it really was a great way for students to be assessing themselves and thinking about future plans for careers.
Okay. For the extension, which some people have been chatting about, we would get into now, whereas in the pre-lesson there was no extension, now we would use some of the skills from Skill 2 and 3A, doing some research, actually reaching out and talking to someone from a particular career of interest. That would be a great way to extend this lesson. And then again in the assessment where the students would do some practice informational interviews in class and evaluate each other, we would get into some skill 3 there. Okay, wonderful. We hope you enjoyed watching the lesson and that it gave you some ideas of how you might practice some of these skills in your own classrooms. Okay, so now we're going to move on from the lesson that you watched on video and talk about some TIFFing methods for your classroom.
Thanks, and again, thanks to Stephanie and to Jamie for sharing the classroom. We're thinking about your classroom in general, and there are different ways that you can TIFF the lesson content. And we are going to be focusing on different areas of TIFFing. We have routines, okay? So we can also TIFF with a learning task format. We can be tiffing with technology. We can be tiffing with norms. And we can be tiffing a classroom with the language that we use.
And so keep in mind, you can see this nicely on the graphic on the screen. We're trying to make our own classroom environment a mirror of the target environment we want our students to enter into. So be that a work training program, some kind of a leadership role in the community, or higher education, we want to model some of the language, norms, routines, etc. that a person would need to be successful in that target environment.
If you turn to your handouts and check on page 22, you can get more of this overlay about tiffing your classroom. When we talk about tiffing, when we speak about routines, these are a sequence of actions that are regularly followed as a routine. Think of it as a process that you use in your classroom. The processes then become a norm when there are standards of acceptable behavior, and then there are expectations within a specified context, but then they're also being perhaps taken out of the routine of your classroom and used in other areas of the community. We also have your learning task format, which are routines and structures for activities and tasks that provide practice of a lesson content. So, for example, what Stephanie did in her video lesson of the KWL chart, that would be a learning task format. Then we have language, vocabulary, and language structures that are necessary to effectively address a specified TIF skill. Again, referring back to Stephanie's lesson, she was targeting that vocabulary of informational interview and the questions students had to come up with. And our last tiffing method is technology, and that's technology that mirrors what is necessary in our target environment. So using the technology that you need in different areas.
That could be email, for example, or being able to use maybe a piece of machinery or a computer.
So which TIF method is which? So TIF methods can be labeled in more than one way. Expecting students to email assignments is both technology, but it's also a norm. It is a norm within your classroom, but then outside of the classroom, in a college setting. Expecting students to speak courteously is a norm, but when you highlight the language structures, you're explaining how to use could and can and may I. It's also a language method. So some of these TIF methods can overlap, but the important thing is that all of these methods reinforce TIF skills consistently and authentically, regardless of your lesson content. So you can be incorporating these in many different ways.
And these are also, I'm going to jump in for a minute here, these are also things you can do in your classroom regardless of how many students you might have, or whether you're multi-level, whether you're a one-room schoolhouse. You can TIF your classroom even when you don't maybe do lesson planning in the same way that some of the other of us with a large number of students do.
We are going to have you guys go through, and we're going to try to do a little group activity. We've got just a few minutes, and I'm not sure if we have time to actually chat these out, but we're going to show you some examples that Stephanie and I use in our classrooms, and I would like you guys to think about which tiffing method it is, okay? For example, we have your daily sign-in sheets, and you guys might see these from MABE or Marks, but students practice a work skill of signing in and out accurately with the correct time and with their signature. So which tipping method do you think this is? A norm. Okay, says Aaron. And we have a routine. But you know what, Aaron? I think that it could be a routine in your classroom, and then it becomes a norm when the students take it out to their workplace. Okay? So we have another example here. Okay. And that is teamwork. So working with A team is an important part of education and the workplace. In this class, you will often be required to work in a team. It is important that you take responsibility for the role. Melody, you say norm. Aaron, you say norm. Let's see what the category is. You guys are right. Woohoo! It is a norm. So again, that teamwork that you include in the classroom, but then you explain how it's used in other areas. You're right, it could be a learning task format, Gail, if maybe you have assigned roles for teamwork in your class. Let's take a look at the next method here. For example, we have using polite language and tone. So again, we're intentionally and explicitly instructing students to say I would like instead of I want or give me. Norm language, yeah, exactly, Aaron. Language, yes, Vicki. That TIF method is language. Next we have using a writing journal. So teacher puts a weekly prompt on the board, and then the students are going to respond to the prompt in maybe their own journal or notebook. Teacher might write a response. And Melody and Aaron, yep, you guys know that is a learning task format. Next we have Schoology, which is something we use here in Minneapolis, and I know some other school districts use it. It's an online class management system. So teachers can be creating assignments in Schoology and distributing them. And Vicki and Aaron, you guys are right. This is a technology. It could also be a routine or a norm because you could be using this technology once you get into post-secondary education. So, think, pair, share. TIFFing your classroom discussion. What is a TIF method in your classroom that already addresses one or more of the DFP subskills? Briefly describe it to your partner. And I'm looking at the time. We've only got 3 minutes. And I'm not sure if we have time to chat this out. And I apologize because this is where I think we get to the meat of a PLC or some sort of hybrid thereof, but we just don't have the time.
All right, so we took a poll when we started today, and we're going to take a poll now to see how you are feeling about this category. How ready are you to take the DFP plunge? Are you still just ready to dip your toes in the water, or are you going to put on that swimming cap and jump right in? So I'm going to launch this poll. Here we go. You can respond.
We'll take about maybe 30 seconds to 40 seconds. Okay, it looks like everyone has voted, and here we go.
It is wonderful to see that 71% of you are ready to take the plunge. 29% of you are wading in the water. But what's really great for Heather and I to see is that we have nobody who is at least not willing to get a little wet, right? Everybody's willing to at least wade in, maybe ankle deep, knee deep. So that is wonderful. Thank you. Okay, as we wrap up today, we want to remind you of some other wonderful resources around the ACES project that are available, okay? So on the ACES website, which you can see on your screen, www.atlasabe.org/resources/ACES, you will see pre- and post-ACES lesson plans. We call that a 3-pack. So we will have a lesson plan that features using these skills at the beginning level. The intermediate level is what we walked you through today with the video and the materials, and then we will be sharing with you an advanced level lesson, okay? You can see their archived videos from this series, PowerPoints, like the one you've just seen today, and then a bonus pack of TIF methods. This webinar, Developing a Future Pathway, is actually the third in a series, and there are more to come, but you can also see archived on the Atlas website the effective communication done by Leah Conklin-Olson and the self-management done by Liz Andrus. Okay? The other resources listed here on the screen, we've got some face-to-face PLCs going this fall and winter, hybrid PLCs, regional workshops, webinars, and other forms of collaboration. So we hope that anyone who's interested continues to access these resources and stay involved in the ACES project. Heather and I will stay on for another couple of minutes if there are any questions or comments. Otherwise, we want to really thank you all for being here today. And that concludes our webinar. So thank you so much. Thank you, Vicki. Here again are some other resources. Thanks, Patsy, for being such a wonderful host today, host and web facilitator.
Here's an example of the ACES website where you can get the information, and we just want to thank you all. And remember that you can email us or contact Atlas for any other questions. Thanks, you guys, and happy holidays, and stay warm.